Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening, downloading, and subscribing to the latest edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. I'm 12 Kyle. Check this out. On this podcast, I'm going to talk about a couple of trips that I made to the hospital. If you've been following this podcast, you know from time to time I will, reveal certain things about myself that are pretty comical. And this podcast will be no different. I'm in pretty good health. I'm in pretty good shape. Work out frequently. Try to eat the right things. And honestly, I don't even really drink like I used to, and I'm not really much of a drinker. So I'm in pretty good shape on that end. And, like anybody else, I still have to, do the annual physical each year. And I'm overdue for mine. So there's that. But nonetheless, I've only had a couple of trips to the hospital. But the ones that I'm going to talk about on this podcast were quite comical and eventful in and of itself. The first trip that I ever made to the hospital, I think I was like 4. I had a hernia. I mean, that don't count because I was actually admitted to the hospital, and I don't even remember having a hernia. I had surgery or whatever the case may be. But my next trip to the hospital that comes to mind actually happened. I want to say I was like a redshirt junior at South Carolina State University. I was playing football, so everything was going well. We were having spring football practice. And so, if you're familiar with South Carolina State University, it's HBCU, historically black college and university. Springtime in South Carolina, Orangeburg. Life was great. And, we're playing spring football, getting ready for the upcoming season. And, I was single and I was out here balling on the field and just having a good time. And, so we had a scrimmage game coming up, and I never forget it was on a Saturday morning. And, so I had a pretty good week of practice that week, even though I hate practice. Anyway, so we're warming up, right? And we're warming up, and, I play wide receiver, okay? And I'm catching passes, and, I never forget because they had the music playing in the stadium. So, we were kind of dancing a little bit and kind of jamming and, just getting ready. The practice hadn't started yet. Again, we're just simply warming up. And, we were running routes, and a quarterback who shall remain nameless switched up the routes, and he said, okay, well, let's run some unders, which is underneath route. We just go up 15 yards and go straight across the middle. And so I'm running my route, and I'll never forget the ball was thrown low by the quarterback. And so, me being the receiver that I am, I go low to get the ball. And the ball actually between the ground and my body, the ball kind of skips. So it bounces off the ground, and I don't catch it, and it bounces. When it hits the ground, it bounces up and hits my hand. And so I didn't catch the ball. And so I went down to the ground. The ball hit the ground, hit my hand, and I rolled over and got up. And, it was an incomplete pass. So I'm jogging back to the huddle, and I realized there was like something stinging me. And I'm like, what is that feeling? And it felt like there was just a sharp pain. And to be honest, I didn't know where the pain was coming from. And I looked down, I looked at my right hand, and my right pinky was dislocated. How do I know it was dislocated? The top of my pinky was going one way and the bottom of my pinky was going another way. It was ugly. And so I looked at it, I was like, damn. That was my first thought. Like, and it's kind of one of those things where when you have pain, it's not until you actually look at your wound, then that's when it really starts hurting. So after I saw it, the pain like really increased, but it wasn't a pain like I felt like I broke something or anything like that, but a pain of just it felt like somebody was sticking me with a needle in my pinky, basically. And so I was like, shit, right? So I'm running toward the huddle. I'm jogging toward the huddle. And then I look down at my finger and I'm like, okay, let me go see the trainer. So I go over to the trainer and I'm like, and the trainer's name is Craig. I was like, Craig, I need you to get my finger. And he's like, what's going on? I was like, I dislocated it. And then he walks over and then all I hear him say was, ooh. And then one of the assistant trainers walks over and she says, ooh. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I know it looks ugly, but I'm going to need you to snap this thing back into place. So I did not want to watch him because basically the bottom part of my pinky, and I don't want to gross you all out, but I want to give you kind of a description as to how it looked. He was basically going to have to take the top part of my pinky and get it over the mid knuckle part of the pinky and put it back into place. But he had to get it over that bone. And so when he was trying to put it back into place, honestly, I turned my head because I didn't want to see it. I could feel it enough. I didn't want to see it. So I turned my head and he was trying, and I just remember him saying, oh boy, I can't do it. Hell, you mean you can't do it? You tripping. I need you to fix my pinky so I can get back in this game. And he couldn't get it. And then so one of the other trainers came over and he's like, hey, can you help me with his finger? And so next thing I know, I've got 2 trainers, a couple of assistant trainers, and by this time, a couple of my teammates are walking over to see what's going on. And I heard somebody's like, oh man, that's fucked up. I mean, like, so my pinky was looking pretty bad at this point. Right. So the other trainer comes over and he can't put it into place either. And so meanwhile, as they're trying to, snap my pinky back into place per se, this pain isn't going away. I'm blocking it out as best I can, but it's not going. But again, it's a stinging pain, not it's not an excruciating pain. Right. So I'm standing there like, okay, all right. So what are we going to do? And then so I hear Craig, the trainer, says, well, we're going to have to take him to the hospital. Are you serious? I mean, like, bro, you went to college for this. I mean, like, you're a professional. You're a medical professional. You can't snap a pinky back into place. And unfortunately, he couldn't. So I'm like, damn, now I got to go to the hospital. And I'll be honest, like, again, I went to South Carolina State University. It's in Orangeburg, South Carolina. I love my school. I'm proud of my school. I'm a proud alum. I love Orangeburg. It's like a second home. However, I knew that the last place that you wanted to be if you ever got injured in Orangeburg was at the hospital in Orangeburg. It's not that it was bad, but it didn't have a great reputation. So, the trainer's like, okay, well, we got to take him to the hospital. So in the meantime, my pinky is still dislocated. And they go over, they give me some ice to, I guess, get the swelling down or whatever. And so I'm sitting there with a bag of ice. So they take my helmet, they take my shoulder pads. I have on a cut off muscle shirt, show off the abs for the ladies. What's up, ladies? And so yeah, I still got on my pants with the pads in them and my cleats. Just want to give you a visual here, right? So I jump in the car, so they don't, there's no ambulance called or anything. I jump in the car and, they I jump in the trainer. I think was it Craig that took, I can't remember if it was Craig or it was the trainer assistant. Somebody took me to the hospital. So I get to the hospital, and again, this happened on my right hand. Well, problem is I'm right-handed, right? And I have to, as you can imagine, you go into the emergency room, you have to fill out paperwork. So they're asking me all these questions. My hand is stinging, and they're asking me to write this stuff, and I can't write with my left hand because I can't write with my right hand because my pinky is, dislocated. And so I'm trying to write with my left hand, and I still got this bag of ice and on my pinky, and I'm not looking at the pinky. And so I go in after I fill out the paperwork. The lady behind the desk she said, well, what happened to your hand? I was like, it's dislocated. My pinky's dislocated. She's like, oh, can I take a look at it? And I'm thinking, okay, she wants to look at it because maybe she can help or something like that. And I show it to her, and she's like, oh, that looks bad. Really? I really didn't need you to tell me that. Right? So then they have me go sit in the waiting room. And it's like, go sit in the waiting room. We'll call you up. So I'm sitting in the waiting room, and, it really wasn't a lot of people in there. But it seemed like after I got in there, more and more people started coming in, right? So after I sat down, there was a little kid came in. He had bumped his head, and his mom was concerned. And so we're sitting there, and I'm sitting there watching TV. And again, I'm in pain, but, all I have is a bag of ice. So then I'm sitting there, about 10 minutes pass by, and this guy comes in, and an older guy, right? And he has this cut on his shin, and the cut is probably about, I don't know, maybe about the length of your index finger, right? And the cut was so deep that you could almost see the white meat in his leg. And I'm like, yo, what happened to you? He was like, I was cutting my grass, and something kicked back from my lawnmower, and it cut me. And so his leg is cut. I mean, like he's not bleeding, but his leg, it's an open wound. Again, to the white meat. So I'm like, damn. So I'm looking at him. I'm like, man, I'm probably going to be in here a while because this guy needs immediate attention. And then this other lady comes in right behind him, and she's holding this like pan, this bed pan to her mouth. And she's throwing up. Right. She's throwing up into the pan. She can barely, breathe or whatever. She's suffering from what they think is heat exhaustion. And so she sits down. She sits on the other side of me. And I'm like, look, lady, she sits on the other side of the room. But I'm like, look, lady, please don't throw up, because if you throw up, then I'm going to see you and I might throw up. So here we are sitting in the emergency room, band of misfits, the kid with the bump on the head, the guy with the cut to the white meat leg, and the lady suffering from heat exhaustion who's throwing up into a bedpan, and me, your boy 12 Kyle, with a dislocated pinky with a bag of ice. Right? So I'm sitting in there waiting. And so again, I know it's, I guess in hospitals, I guess it's first come first, I guess. But I would think that with the severity, the lady who was suffering from heat exhaustion, because this lady had to be in her 50s, probably mid to late 50s. And the guy who got this cut, he had to at least be in his 60s on his leg. I would think that they probably would see them before they saw me. That was just my thinking. Because, hey, again, it's a dislocated pinky. What can you do? You just need a doctor to snap it into place. And so I'm sitting there. And when I tell you at least an hour and a half passed by, it's a Saturday. An hour and a half passed by, and they finally, the doors open, and I'm like, okay, now they're going to call these people back in, and they're not going to call me. And they called me. I felt like I was on The Price is Right. Come on down. And then I was bugged because I was like, yo, I want to be seen, but I think these people probably need to see a doctor before I need to see a doctor, right? But it wasn't my choice. So, the lady was still over there in the corner throwing up, suffering from heat exhaustion, and they were giving her Gatorade and stuff like that. She was throwing it right back up. And the guy still was sitting there with the white meat showing him his shin, and little kid with the little bump on his head, and here I was going to the back. So they put me in a room, and I'm sitting in there, and it seems like it's taking forever, right? And so the doctor comes in, he takes a look at it, and he tries to snap it into place, and he still can't snap it into place. So again, I'm sitting in the hospital in Orangeburg, South Carolina, in my football pants with the pads, my cleats, and a cutoff t-shirt and a bag of ice with a dislocated pinky. And so he's like, oh boy, I can't move this. And I'm like, dude, you went to medical school to be able to replace it with to fix a dislocated pinky. All you gotta do is just snap it back into place, bruh. And so he says to me, we're probably gonna have to give you a shot for your pain, and then we'll be able to proceed. I was like, okay, all right, cool. So he leaves, and he's gone, I don't know, felt like 20 minutes. And again, I'm sitting in a room, there's no TV. This is the 90s, so there's no cell phone. So I'm just sitting here just kind of looking at old People magazines or whatever. Again, with a dislocated pinky and a bag of ice that's probably almost melted by now. So I'm getting no relief from this ice. So he comes in and says, okay, I'm going to give you a shot for the pain. I was like, all right, cool. So I stick my pinky out. And he said, well, I need you to drop your trousers. Huh? Drop my trousers? He's like, well, we have to give you the shot, but, it'll be easier and quicker for us to give you a shot in your buttocks. Man, I looked around like, man, you shitting me? You ain't shooting me in my ass. And so I'm thinking like I'm on candid camera or something. I'm like, this can't be real. This guy really wants to give me a medicine shot on my butt for a dislocated pinky. I mean, you would think that the pain is in the pinky, so that's where the shot should be, right? I mean, again, I never went to medical school. I just watched, 3 seasons of Doogie Howser. What do I know? So I'm like, are you sure? He's like, yeah. He's like, that's the quickest way. Okay. So I pulled my pants down and I was like, I don't know what the fuck is going on here. Pull my pants down, put my underwear down, and get the shot in the ass. On the butt cheek. I should say on the top part of my butt cheek. And lo and behold, he was correct. I mean, that pain medicine got into my system so fast. And so I pulled my pants up and, within a minute, I could feel the medicine. Now, full disclosure, I'm not someone who takes medicine, right? If I get a cold, I'll take cold medicine, but I rarely put like foreign stuff into my body. So like even like most people take, I don't know, aspirin for headaches. Like I don't take aspirin for headaches. I might get 2 or 3 headaches in a year. So I never take aspirin. So I'm not, it's rare for me to put something in my body that's not food. I guess that's the best way that I can describe it. So I don't know what this pain medicine was, but it had me so high and loofy. And I was like, I felt like I was in another zone or something. Like I felt like I was on Mars or something. And I'm in there spacing out and almost falling asleep. And then I'm like, did this dude try to get me on drugs or something? So he could take advantage of me? I mean, like on the real, and that's not funny, but I was out of it. Like I didn't know what was going on. And then he comes back in and he's got another doctor and they're taking a look at it and they finally, he's able to, and again, while he's doing this, I'm not even looking. But I was fully aware when they came in the room. But prior to them coming in the room, I didn't know what was going on. I was in and out of like, I didn't fall asleep, but I kept like dozing off or whatever like that. But again, I'm sitting on a table, so I'm not going to lay down. I'm just sitting up there and just kind of dozing off. And so he comes in and he snaps it into place. And then they put a splint on my pinky. And yeah, that was my adventure. And here's the weird part. So after all of this goes down, I go back in the waiting room to get my release and everything like that. The lady is still sitting in the corner with the heat exhaustion. And I don't know if they saw her or not, but she was still in the corner. And my man with the cut on his leg, they gave him like a big Band-Aid, and he was sitting in the corner too. And I'm like, what the hell's going on in this hospital, man? And so yeah, and then the trainer came and picked me up, and obviously I missed the game because I was in this hospital for the better part of about 4 hours. And I don't know why it took so long to fix a dislocated pinky, but they fixed it. My pinky it doesn't look bad. It looks bad to me, but I mean, it looks regular to most people. It's still a little disconfigured a little bit. But it's football. I mean, you play football, you're going to have injuries and stuff like that. So, yeah, that was my one of my trips to the hospital. So word to the wise, if you're ever in Orangeburg, South Carolina, and you have to go to the hospital, don't. So my second trip to the hospital, this one wasn't pleasant either. This had to be like probably back in, I want to say this was it's probably like 2000, right? And because I remember because my oldest son, Dion, he was a little guy at the time, and it was just me and my wife and Dion. And so I'll never forget, I was working, and me and one of my coworkers, he was like, "Yo, man," he's like, "Let's my boy Calvin, shout out to Calvin." He's like, "Yo, let's there's this new Chinese restaurant around the corner from our office." He's like, "I want to go check it out." I was like, "All right, bet, we can do lunch." So we left work. It was, I'll never forget, it was a Friday. And we left work and, went to the little Chinese restaurant. They had a little grand opening sign and stuff and everything and like that. And I'll be honest, I like Chinese food. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to offend anybody, any of my Chinese brothers that are listening to this podcast. Shout out to everybody in China that's listening. Because I know you do listen. That said, I'm very particular about the Chinese food that I eat and where I eat it from. I guess that's what I'm saying. Like, there's a Chinese spot around my way here that I eat Chinese food. There was a spot in Orangeburg where I went to college where I would eat Chinese food. But other than that, I just don't like, if I go to your town and I'm hanging out with you and you say, let's get some Chinese food, I'm probably not going to eat it. I'm just very particular about the Chinese food that I eat, right? So anyway, so me and Calvin, we go to this spot for lunch or whatever like that. And this spot is still open, by the way. And again, this was 2000. So we go, and I don't even think I kept it simple. I think I had like shrimp fried rice because I never do the exotic stuff and everything like that. I keep it simple. I just shrimp fried rice. That's about enough for me. My thing is, I don't think you can mess up fried rice. I don't think you can mess up shrimp. I mean, if you do, something's wrong. Nonetheless, we eat lunch. The food was good. It was good, right? And so come back to work, and me and Calvin, we're there, we're working whatever till 5 o'clock. 5 o'clock comes. My stomach started to feel a little kind of queasy a little bit right before we left work. But I was okay. I was cool. I was like, all right, no big deal. I was like, maybe I'll just have to, sit on some water when I get home. And so I got home and my wife was there. Dion was there. And, we just chilling, just regular Friday night, not doing anything in particular. And I remember going home and I didn't have to go to the bathroom. My stomach felt, like I said, a little queasy, but once I got home, I didn't have to go to the bathroom. I know that's TMI, but anyway. So I'm in the room, and the next thing I know, like, it was literally all of a sudden, everything that I ate came up. And I mean, like, I threw up everything. And so I'm like, yo, I'm bugging out. And I couldn't even make it to the bath. Like, I was on my way to the bathroom and threw up like in the hallway near the bathroom. And so my wife comes in. She was like, are you okay? You okay? I was like, yeah. So my stomach is hurting like that. And so she was like, are you okay? And I was like, yeah, I'm okay. Just give me some water. So I got some water and I sat for a minute and I thought I was cool. And then more came and then more came. And so then I started sweating. I started breaking out into this sweat. And she was like, what did you eat today? And I was like, nothing. I said, me and Calvin went to this Chinese place around the corner. And she was like, you had Chinese food? And I was like, yeah. And she was like, you may have gotten food poisoning. I was like, nah, this ain't no food poisoning. And so I was feeling, I mean, like, normally if you throw up, you feel better after you throw up, right? Not in this case. I was actually feeling worse. So I'm sitting in a chair and I'm kind of slumped over in the chair. And then I have to go back to the bathroom again to throw up. And so after 3 times, my wife's like, look, you're probably dehydrating and you probably have food poisoning. You need to go to the hospital. And so me, reminiscing on the time that I spent in the hospital in Orangeburg, I was very apprehensive about going to the hospital. I'm like, nah, I'm good. Typical man, stubborn, right? And she was like, no, you're going. And so, when your woman says, no, you're going, you're going. So we get in the car. I don't know what I think. We left Dion with our good friend and she babysat him. And so we went to the hospital. So I go into the emergency room. Fortunately for me, there was nobody in there with a cut on their leg or anybody throwing up, just me. So I think I threw up again in the hospital in the emergency room bathroom before they, but at this point I didn't have anything else on my stomach. Like there was literally nothing coming out. So they, admit me or whatever. No, I'm sorry. They don't admit me. They take me to the back and they say, okay, well, because by this time I'm getting a fever. And that's where the concern was for my wife, because she was like, if you're throwing up, that's one thing. You're throwing up and you have a fever, that's something else. And that's not something that she could diagnose or anybody else could. You have to see somebody in, the medical profession. You have to see a doctor so that they can properly diagnose you and give you whatever medications you need, because we don't know what's going on at this point. Right. So I'm getting this fever and I think I took some Tylenol or something like that before we left. But again, I threw up, so that stuff came right back out. So the nurse comes in and the nurse is, she's talking or whatever, and she's, getting my information. That she took my temperature and they took my blood pressure, and, the blood pressure was fine, but the temperature was, I think it was like 103 or something, 103, 104, something like that. And so I'm in there, I'm smoking, I'm on fire. I don't necessarily feel bad. My stomach is killing me. And I couldn't keep anything. I tried to drink water and I tried to drink cold water. And I don't know if necessarily if water actually helps when you're throwing up. It made it worse. So I'm sick, y'all. I'm out of it. Right. And I'm sitting in a room and they actually have a TV. So I'm watching the game and I'm like, this is terrible. I'm just feeling bad. And so, the lady's checking my stats or whatever like that. And so she comes in. She comes in, right? And she says to my wife, well, here's what we have. He has a fever, but because he can't keep anything down, we can't give him anything orally because he's just going to throw it right back up. So, and my wife's like, okay, well, yeah, that's probably correct. So what do we need to do? So, and again, she's talking to my wife. So I'm listening to the conversation. I'm looking at the TV And I'm hearing everything, and I'm not really paying them any attention, but I'm listening, right? And she said, so one thing we can do, we can give him like some Tylenol via an enema. And so when I hear this, I said, an enema? Okay, yeah, that's what's up. Give me an enema. Bring on the enema. And my wife, Sharice, looks at me and her knowing me the way that she knows me, she knows that at this point, I don't know what an enema is. I'm almost ashamed to admit this, but I didn't. And I am at this point 27, 28 years old. I don't know what an enema is. So when the lady said, we'll have to give him an enema, I'm like, yeah, bring on the enema. Give it here. I'll take it. And I didn't know what an enema was. All I heard was public enema. So Sharice looks at me and she's like, oh, you don't know. And she looks at the nurse, and the nurse looks at her like, oh, he don't know. And so the nurse kind of smiles and she whispers to my wife, I'll let you discuss it with him privately. Because the nurse knew at this point, I didn't know what the hell I was talking about. And again, I'm not under any medication, so it's not like I'm going crazy. So she realizes that, okay, I'm going to have to leave this man with his wife so she can try to explain to him what's about to take place, and he has to be okay with it. So she leaves out. She has this little smile on her face, like this little smirk, like, oh, this is about to be funny. But to me, again, all of this is unbeknownst to me. I don't know anything. I'm like, hey, bring on the enema. I thought it was like a cough drop or something. So she leaves the room, and Sharice is like, do you know what an enema is? I was like, medicine, I guess. I was like, but I just need something to make me feel better because I feel bad and I'm hot. And I was like, I just feel terrible. And then she explained to me what an enema was and how they were going to have to put it in my body. So, of course, when Sharice explains this to me, my response is simple. Oh, hell no. Y'all ain't doing nothing. Nah, just let me throw up. Oh, man. So Sharice would spend the next 5 minutes trying to convince me that I needed this enema. And I was dead set against the enema. But I had no choice. And so the nurse comes in about 10 minutes later. Stupid little smile on her face. Did you discuss it with your husband? Yes, I did. And she said, you know what, ma'am? She said, I can administer it. Man, oh my gosh. I'll say this. After getting the enema, I felt better, but I vowed to never, ever go through that again. Of course, it was out of my control, but I don't ever want to go through that again. Took the enema. In about, 20 minutes or so, temperature went down. By the time I left the hospital, temperature was probably right at about 99. So they released me. My vitals and everything was fine. I think I might have been in the hospital maybe about 4 or 5 hours. No, I'm sorry. Probably about 3 hours. It wasn't that long. But yeah, man, that was my my adventures to the hospital. I'm pretty sure at some point we all have to go to the hospital, except for me. I'm not going back to the hospital. I'm never going back to the hospital. I might come to visit someone, but as far as a patient, no, I'm not looking forward to the next time that I am a patient. So when that time comes, if and when that time comes, I should say, hopefully, it'll be much, much fun. Well, I don't want to be fun. Hopefully it won't be as painful, and hopefully it won't be as comical. That's going to do it for me. Thank you for checking out the latest edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. I'm your boy 12 Kyle. I'll catch you guys next time. 5 G's.